What's a scientific fact that creeps you out? Honestly, nothing is more creepy than how deep sea anglerfish mate. The deep sea is dark, and the anglerfish are spread very thinly. Therefore, when an anglerfish meets another anglerfish, it's incredibly important they get the chance to mate over and over again. The evolutionary strategy that deep sea anglerfish devised is extra creepy. The male latches onto the female, biting her and never letting go. That way he can inseminate the eggs she drops. Not that bad so far, right? But wait, how does he eat if he's latched on his mate? Well, the circulatory systems fuse and the female provides nutrients for the male through this fused circulatory system. The true horror starts here. The organs of male start to wither and atrophy, being absorbed into the female. Eventually, the male is reduced to a lump of testicles the females use to fertilize their eggs. Females are often covered in bumps of several males that have melted into the female, becoming a literal body horror lump of meat on the female. Maybe it's good H.P. Lovecraft didn't survive to the days of the internet. He would have had a field day with this one. Fun fact: H.P. Lovecraft was absolutely terrified of everything. Fears include weird geometry, people of color, except Mexican people, because he thought they had magic Aztec powers, interracial marriage, poor people, indigenous cultures, and the standard cosmic stuff we all know him for today. Overly Sarcastic Productions has a pretty interesting and funny video on him that I definitely recommend. Obligate sublicide. In some species of animals, multiple offspring are born, but only one is actually raised by the mother. The others are born only as backup in case the firstborn doesn't survive. When the firstborn is fine, which is the typical case, it kills the others. I remember witnessing a mantis egg case hatching in my high school science class. I asked the teacher, what could possibly be small enough for them to eat? And he was just casually like, they'll eat each other. A fever is your body way of saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We either destroy the enemy, or we die with them. COVID. Hehe. Time to tell the lungs to kill themselves. Immune system. Peep you. I will beat you, and the lungs, because I'm that angry. Caterpillars turn completely into goo in their cocoon, and then become a butterfly. Edit. This blew up. According to my inbox, many people have been creeped out. A good day's work. And there is evidence they retain memories from their pre-goo days. Memories of strong positive/negative stimuli that they show preference for/aversion to, even after metamorphosis. Pre-goo days. I love it. Your brain is making decisions before you are even aware of the decisions it has made. It also makes decisions based off of learned behavior, and you just go along with it. A study actually showed your limbs, fingers, toes, etc. react to stimuli before your brain sends the response to do so. That's just human reflex arcs. Because of some pesticides used, roaches won't go anywhere near a meth lab. Undefined. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the fact we don't have to deal with swarms of cranked up cockroaches. Well, thank you for the nightmares. That the only reason you are a functional human is that your DNA is so tangled that entire sections can't get decoded and screw it up undefined. Actually better one. If you disconnect the halves of the brain and ask them to pick out something they prefer, your hands will disagree. What's your favorite color will result in one hand choosing red, but one choosing green. Go look up split brain patients. For research purposes, how does one go about disconnecting the sides of the brain? That as the permafrost melts, a lot of locked up methane will be released, and microorganisms there will wake up and do their jobs, breaking down organic matter, and release more methane and greenhouse gases. And possible ancient diseases. Covered 22 BC. If you believe strongly enough that you have been cursed, your brain can shut itself off entirely in severe cases. The psychological term for it is voodoo death syndrome. It's just the fact you can literally think yourself to death that unsettles me so. Our brains are fascinating. If we believe strongly enough that something is real, our bodies respond accordingly. In the same vein as your example, the same phenomenon happens to women who desperately want to be pregnant. Their bellies will swell, their menstrual periods will stop, their breasts will become sore and enlarged, and they'll develop morning sickness. When the Titanic sank, none of the shoes decomposed, so there's ton of shoes at the bottom of the ocean. Free shoes. The depths people will sink to for free speep. Semicolon. The brain can play tricks on you. When you look at a clock and the second hand seems to freeze for a moment, your brain is actually generating a false memory, and your perception of time stretches slightly backward. This effect is called chronostasis. Wait, what? Pay attention to the second hand of a clock, blink, and see how long it stays there. A gamma ray burst could wipe out all life on Earth instantly with no warning. A peeping what? An ultra-powerful supernova that sends incredibly powerful blasts of gamma rays across the galaxy at light speed. If one hits Earth, everything is erased instantly. There is virtually no way to ever see one coming. So we would never even know it happened before we were all killed. There is something called the squeeze, where when people had old scuba suits with tubes, you could actually get sucked into that tube if the pressure was off. You are literally shredded through your own breathing tube. Hate to be that guy, but that's hard hat surface supplied diving. Not scuba. Scuba is by definition self-contained. But yes, it is possible. Mythbusters showed it in rather spectacular fashion, though the pig carcass didn't actually make it all the way up the tube. Undefined. Just how big of a number a mole actually is. I can still remember the mole song our chemistry teacher played for us. The song is from when the world population was 5 billion. The sudden urge to jump off of a very high height. You can be physically and mentally stable to the greatest degree and still have this feeling when at such a high height. I heard it's the call of the void, and it's a normal human thought. The best example is when you're driving along and think, for a fraction of a second, about swerving into oncoming traffic, or into a tree. Some mutations of just one letter in the DNA code can kill the fetus almost instantly, but some people live and have a seemingly healthy life while missing a whole chromosome. If you understand anything about biology, that's completely wild. I think mutations in cytochrome C are pretty much lethal, and cytochrome C has barely changed in millions of years. Cytochrome C, the load-bearing drywall of the genome. Thinking about how breathing and lungs work freaks me out. Once I start thinking about it, all I can think about is my breathing, and then I have to force myself to stop thinking about it. Thinking about it always switches my breathing to manual rather than automatic. Critical error. Manual blinking activated. Doctors/scientists are barely keeping up with the influenza virus. It keeps on mutating rapidly. It really wants to get inside you. At least something wants to. That so many vegetables came from the same plant. Broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, etc. They are, botanically speaking, the same species. Humans have just bred them to emphasize different trace buds, leaves, tubers. Imagine if humans were as genetically flexible. Imagine a person walking around with giant toes, but otherwise normal. Actually, plant genetics in general is a weird world. I mean, if we spent generations selectively breeding ourselves, based on traits like giant toes, something like that could happen. Just look at dogs. The canine family is actually unusual in that respect. The entire canine family has slippery genes. I don't understand it. I'm not a geneticist. Just read about it, and is much more variable in their phenotypes than other families of mammals. Look at other animals that have been domesticated for thousands of years. Cats, horses, sheep and goats, cattle. The breeds vary in their appearances, but nowhere near as much as different breeds of dogs do. A Shetland pony and a Percher and draft horse resemble each other much more than do a pug and a greyhound. Ditto a Siamese cat versus an American Shorthair, or a Nubian goat vs a boar goat.